When my husband walked out on me in the delivery room, leaving me with nothing but the $15,000 debt from his failed startup, my first contraction hit, and I smiled. Between pushes, I blocked his number and used the hospital Wi-Fi to register a new business name I'd been saving. He was screaming to his friends that he was finally free, but he had no idea he'd just given me the one thing I needed to launch it: rage. You won't believe the company he begged for a job at 5 years later. The beeping of the heart monitor is a metronome counting down to a life I have to start alone. It's a steady, intrusive rhythm in the sterile white of the delivery room. 1, 2, 3. A contraction grips my entire being, a wave of incandescent pain that starts in my lower back and crests over my swollen belly. I bite down on my lip, tasting the coppery tang of blood. My knuckles are white where I'm clutching the bed rail. There is no hand to squeeze, no soft voice whispering encouragement in my ear. There is only the clinical kindness of a nurse named Brenda, whose face swims in and out of focus, and the deafening echo of a slammed door. My gaze drifts to the window. The sky outside is a bruised purple, the city lights beginning to glitter like scattered, indifferent diamonds. It's 7:14 p.m. 6 hours and 22 minutes ago, Ricardo walked out. He didn't just walk out of our apartment, he walked out of our life, surgically excising himself from the future we had spent 3 years building. I remember the way the light from the hallway caught the silver zipper on his leather duffel bag. It was the expensive one I'd bought him for his 30th birthday, using the bonus I'd received from my paralegal job. A job I'd held on to, working 60-hour weeks so he could find himself after his last startup, a bespoke coffee bean subscription service, had imploded, taking with it the last $15,000 of my personal savings. "I can't do this, Laura," he'd said. His voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I had once mistaken for love. He stood by the door, already a stranger in the home I had so carefully curated. The nursery door was slightly ajar behind him, a slice of pale yellow wall visible, the hand-painted mural of whimsical forest animals I'd spent a month on, now looking like a cruel joke. "Can't do what, Rico?" I asked, my own voice sounding small, distant. My hand rested on my belly, where our daughter was a restless, insistent presence. The hospital bag, the one we'd packed together just last week, sat by the door like a sad, abandoned puppy. He had laughed while folding the tiny onesies, his thumb tracing the little embroidered duck on one of them. A performance. It had all been a performance. This, he said, gesturing vaguely around the room, at my body, at the life contained within it. The house, the baby, the whole 9 yards. It's a cage. I'm not ready to be in a cage. I see it now, replaying the memory between the crests of pain. I see the flicker in his eyes, not of regret, but of impatience. He wanted it to be over. He wanted to be gone. He spoke of another woman, a free spirit he'd met at a yoga retreat he'd gone on my treat, again, to de-stress. Her name was Amber. Of course it was. He spoke of a future untethered, of travel, of spontaneity, of a life where the only person he had to be responsible for was himself. So the last 3 years, our marriage, this baby, I couldn't finish the sentence. The words were shards of glass in my throat. It was a mistake, he said, and the clinical finality of it was worse than any screaming match. I should have been honest sooner. I'm sorry it came to this. He wasn't sorry. He was just inconvenienced by the timing. He picked up his bag. The sound of the zipper closing was the sound of my world being locked away. The click of the front door shutting was the sound of the key being thrown away. I stood there for a full minute, listening, until the roar of his sports car, the one with the lease payment I co-signed for, faded into the city's hum. Then the first real contraction hit me, sharp and unforgiving, as if my body understood before my mind did that I was now utterly and completely on my own. Another wave of pain brings me back to the present. It's a monster of a contraction, and a low, guttural sound escapes my lips. Brenda is there instantly, her hand cool on my forehead. "You're doing great, Laura. Just breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth." I try to follow her instructions, but my mind is a chaotic slideshow of betrayals. It wasn't just the other woman. It wasn't just him leaving me on the precipice of childbirth. The betrayal ran deeper, a complex root system that had been nourishing itself on my life, my money, my hope, for years. I think of the joint bank account. Our shared future account. I had set up an automatic transfer, $500 from every paycheck, for 3 years straight. It was for a down payment on a house, a proper family home in a good school district. He was supposed to be contributing too, from the freelance graphic design work he occasionally picked up. He always had excuses. A client paid late. A project fell through. The software subscription was more expensive than he thought. I always covered the shortfall. We're a team, Rico, I'd say, transferring another $1,000 to cover our rent. What's mine is yours. He would smile, kiss my forehead, and call me his rock. I wasn't his rock. I was his quarry, and he had been mining me for all I was worth. The memory of my grandmother's face, frail and hopeful in her hospice bed, flashes behind my eyes. She had given me her wedding rings before she passed. "This is for a rainy day, Mija," she'd whispered, her voice like rustling leaves. Or for a down payment on a happy life. 2 years ago, Ricardo had come to me with a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. A friend of his was developing an app. It was the next big thing. He was so passionate, his eyes alight with the dream of it all. He needed $20,000 to get in on the ground floor. The bank had turned him down for a loan. I remember the weight of the rings in my palm at the pawn shop, the cold disinterest in the broker's eyes as he named a price. $22,500. I took the deal. I gave Ricardo the money. The app never materialized. The friend disappeared. Ricardo was devastated, or so he said. He was so convincing in his performance of failure that I spent weeks comforting him, telling him the money didn't matter, that we still had each other. He let me comfort him for losing my grandmother's legacy. "Okay, Laura, on this next one, I need you to give me a big push." The doctor's voice cuts through my reverie. He's new in the room, his face calm and authoritative. I nod, gathering what's left of my strength. The machine beeps faster. The pain is no longer a wave, it's an ocean, and I am drowning in it. As I bear down, every muscle in my body screaming, my phone, lying on the bedside table, buzzes. It's a small sound in the symphony of medical urgency, but it cuts through the noise like a scalpel. Brenda, seeing my gaze flicker to it, picks it up. "A notification," she says, her brow furrowed. "Looks like an email confirmation." "From who?" I gasp, panting. She hesitates. "It's from Bali Getaway Villas." The world stops. The pain, the beeping, the doctor's voice, it all fades into a dull hum. Bali. That's where he had always wanted to go. We had a picture of a villa, torn from a travel magazine, taped to our refrigerator. "One day, Laura," he would say. "When we make it big." "Read it," I say, my voice a rasp. Brenda's eyes are filled with pity. "Read it," I insist, a terrifying calm settling over me. She clears her throat and reads, "Dear Mr. Ricardo Vargas, thank you for your payment. We are pleased to confirm your booking for the Ocean View Honeymoon Suite for 2 adults. Check in, today's date. Check out, 3 weeks from today. Total charge to your visa ending in 4027, $8,750. Visa 4027. My visa. The one he was an authorized user on. The one I kept for emergencies. He had called this an emergency. His escape. He had planned it. While I was timing contractions, he was checking into a honeymoon suite with my money. The money I had been saving for maternity leave. The money I needed to feed our child. He wasn't just leaving me, he was gutting me. He was salting the earth of my life to make sure nothing could ever grow there again. A rage, cold and pure, ignites in my chest, burning away the pain, the fear, the heartbreak. It's a chemical reaction, transforming my grief into something solid. Something heavy. Something I can use. "All right, Laura," the doctor says, his voice pulling me back. "The baby is crowning. I need a big push. Right now." "Push!" I scream, but it's not a scream of pain. It's a scream of fury, of birth, of declaration. I push with the force of every lie, every dollar stolen, every broken promise. I push with the memory of my grandmother's rings and the ghost of a coffee bean business. I push with the image of him and Amber sipping cocktails in a Balinese villa, paid for with my future. In that moment, I am not just pushing a child into the world. I am pushing out the old Laura, the trusting, generous, foolish Laura. I am birthing myself as well. Then, there is a final, tearing release, and the room is filled with a new sound. The powerful, indignant cry of a newborn. It's a girl, the doctor announces, his voice filled with professional cheer. Congratulations, Mom. You have a beautiful, healthy daughter. They lay her on my chest, a tiny, squirming, red-faced creature with a thatch of dark hair just like his. She is all vernix and fury, her little fists clenched as if ready for a fight. I look at her, this perfect, innocent being, and the cold rage in my chest melts, not away, but into something else. It reshapes itself into a shield. A promise. Her name is Sophia. I decided in that instant. It means wisdom. A wisdom I had paid for in the most brutal way imaginable. They clean us both up. They move me to a recovery room. It's quieter here. Sophia is asleep in a plastic bassinet beside my bed. The nurse has brought me a tray of food, jello, broth, a dry turkey sandwich. I stare at it, my appetite gone, my mind working with a clarity I haven't felt in years. I pick up my phone. My hands are shaking, but my purpose is steady. I open the banking app. Joint checking, $42. 11. Joint savings, $112. 98. My personal savings, minus $8,750, thanks to the overdraft from the Bali charge on my visa. I take a screenshot of each screen. I forward the email from Bali Getaway Villas to my personal email address. I go to the credit card app and report the card as stolen, freezing the account. Let him try to pay for his next cocktail with a declined card. It's a small, petty act, but it's a start. I scroll through my contacts and stop on his mother's name, Elena. She had always doted on him, her perfect, brilliant son. She had always been polite but cool to me, as if I were a temporary fixture. I type a message. My thumb hovers over the send button. What's the point? She will take his side. They will paint me as the hysterical, demanding wife who drove him away. I delete the message. My war is not with her. It is with him. But it will not be a war of words or emotions. It will be a war of survival and of success. I look at Sophia, her tiny chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. He didn't want this. He called her a cage. But as I look at her perfect face, I don't feel caged. I feel a strange, terrifying, and exhilarating sense of freedom. I am free from the weight of his dreams, his failures, his expectations. All that matters now is this little person. My gaze falls on my purse and on the old, worn leather recipe book poking out of the top, my grandmother's. I had put it in my hospital bag for comfort, a connection to the strongest woman I had ever known. She had raised 3 children on her own after my grandfather died, supporting them with the small bakery she ran out of her own kitchen. I can almost smell it now, overriding the antiseptic scent of the hospital, cinnamon, almond, burnt sugar. He thought he had left me with nothing. He was wrong. He left me with an empty bank account and a mountain of debt, yes. But he also left me with a reason. A reason sleeping peacefully in a plastic box beside me. And in my bag, my grandmother had left me a recipe. Not just for cakes, but for survival. I pick up the dry turkey sandwich and take a bite. I will need my strength. The company I was a paralegal for had downsized 3 months ago. I'd been living on my savings, the ones now funding a romantic getaway in Indonesia. I have no job. I have no partner. I have a newborn daughter. I have $155.09 to my name. It is, I decide, more than enough. It's the seed money for my new life. A life he will have no part in. I will not just survive this. I will build an empire on the ashes of the life he burned down. And one day, he will see what he threw away. That is a promise. The hospital discharged me into a world that felt both alien and brutally familiar. The gray drizzle of a Seattle November matched the landscape of my heart. My friend Maria, a saint with a spare room and a perpetually worried expression, picked me up. She cooed over Sophia, her voice a soft balm against the harshness of my new reality, but her eyes kept flicking to me, searching for cracks. I let her see them. I was too tired to pretend. That first week was a drowning. Sophia was a colicky, red-faced tyrant who demanded everything I had and then some. Sleep was a forgotten luxury, parceled out in 20-minute increments between feedings and frantic diaper changes. The silence of Maria's apartment at 3 a.m. was a physical weight, broken only by the baby's cries and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The $155.09 sat in my wallet like a judgment. It had to cover diapers, wipes, formula to supplement my own flagging supply, and my share of Maria's groceries. Every dollar spent felt like chipping a piece from a lifeboat. One night, while Sophia finally slept, a fragile truce declared in the war against her own tiny digestive system, I sank onto the lumpy guest room bed, the smell of sour milk clinging to my clothes. I was hollowed out, a shell of a woman. My gaze fell on my purse, and I pulled out my grandmother's recipe book. The leather was cracked, the pages softened and stained with the ghosts of butter and vanilla. I opened it, and the scent was a resurrection. Cinnamon, almond, burnt sugar. It was the smell of safety, of strength. Her handwriting, a beautiful, looping cursive, filled the pages. But it wasn't just lists of ingredients. In the margins, she had written notes. Asterisk, Henderson's flour is a cheat, always short weight. Go to Miller's. A drop of vinegar makes the meringue hold its peaks, even on a rainy day. Never let a customer leave unhappy. A free cookie is cheaper than a bad reputation. Asterisk, this wasn't a book of recipes. It was a manual for a fortress. A blueprint for survival. I turned to the first page, a simple recipe for almond biscotti. Underneath the instructions, she had written, asterisk, cheap to make, keeps forever, and feels like a luxury. A good start. A good start. The words echoed in the profound quiet. I had $87.34 left. I spent $30 on flour, sugar, eggs, almonds, and vanilla. Maria let me use her kitchen, her expression a mixture of pity and hope. The rhythmic work of measuring, mixing, and kneading was a meditation. As the biscotti baked, the warm, nutty scent filled the small apartment, chasing away the lingering despair. It was the first time in months I had created something that wasn't born of pain. I packed the crisp, golden cookies into small cellophane bags tied with cheap ribbon. My first battlefield was the Fremont Sunday Market. I paid the $25 fee for a stall, which was just a rickety card table I'd borrowed from Maria. I set out my bags of biscotti, a hand-painted sign that read Sophia's Sweets, and a tin can for the money. Sophia slept in her carrier, strapped to my chest, her warmth a steadying presence against my ribs. For the first hour, people streamed past, their eyes gliding over my humble display. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. What if no one bought anything? What if this was just another failure? Then a woman with a kind face stopped. Almond biscotti, she asked, her smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. My nana used to make these. She bought 2 bags. I almost cried as I handed her the change. That first sale was a tiny spark in a vast darkness. By the end of the day, I had sold out. I counted the crumpled bills in the tin can, $115. I had turned $30 into $115. After the stall fee, my profit was $60. It wasn't an empire, but it was food for the week. It was hope. The next few months fell into a grueling rhythm. By day, I found a job cleaning houses in Laurelhurst. The scent of bleach and expensive wood polish a constant reminder of the life I didn't have. My hands grew raw, my back ached, but the pay was cash and the hours were flexible. Every evening, after scrubbing other people's lives to a shine, I would come home to my own, put Sophia to bed, and bake. Biscotti gave way to lemon bars, oatmeal cookies, and a decadent chocolate fudge cake sold by the slice. The market became my second home. I learned the ebb and flow of the crowds, the names of the other vendors, the quiet satisfaction of a customer's eyes widening in pleasure after their first bite. My chief rival was a portly, balding man named Arthur Henderson who ran a stall called Art's Traditional Treats. He sold stodgy scones and dry cupcakes, but he'd been there for 20 years and acted like he owned the place. He saw my growing line of customers as a personal affront. "Her stuff is all newfangled nonsense," I overheard him telling a regular one afternoon. "No substance. Give me a proper Victoria sponge any day." He started setting up his tables to deliberately block the sight line to my stall. He complained to the market manager that my overpowering smells were interfering with his delicate aromas. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that my newfangled nonsense was the only thing keeping my daughter in diapers. Instead, I remembered my grandmother's note, *Henderson's flour is a cheat. I smiled politely. I worked harder. I used better ingredients. I remembered the other note, *A free cookie is cheaper than a bad reputation. I started giving away free samples, tiny slivers of cake that were more potent than any argument. My line grew longer. Arthur's face grew redder. The turning point came in the form of a flyer for the annual Taste of Seattle food fair. There was a Best New Baker competition. The entry fee was $200. It was nearly all the money I had saved, a tiny emergency fund I kept tucked away in the recipe book. It was a terrifying gamble. Maria thought I was crazy. "Laura, that's your rent money if the cleaning jobs dry up." "If I win, I won't need the cleaning jobs," I told her, my voice steadier than I felt. I knew I couldn't compete on volume or tradition. I had to be unforgettable. I spent a week poring over the recipe book, searching for a showstopper. I found it on a page stained with what looked like coffee and tears. A Persian love cake, a fragrant, ethereal concoction of almond flour, cardamom, rosewater, and saffron, topped with pistachios and candied rose petals. Beside the recipe, my grandmother had scrawled, "This is for when you need to make them fall in love." The night before the fair, I barely slept. I baked the cake with a reverence I usually reserved for my daughter. Every measurement was precise, every stir deliberate. The air in the kitchen was thick with the scent of a faraway land, a promise of something magical. The fair was an overwhelming cacophony of sounds and smells. I stood at my tiny booth, my single, perfect cake displayed on a platter I'd bought at a thrift store. Arthur Henderson was there, his table groaning under the weight of a dozen different beige-colored pastries. He sneered as he walked past. "Good luck, sweetheart. You'll need it." The judges, a panel of local chefs and food critics, moved through the aisles with grim purpose. When they got to my stall, my heart hammered against my ribs. I cut 3 small, perfect slices, my hand trembling slightly. A stern-looking woman with sharp glasses took a bite. Her eyes closed. She didn't speak, but a slow smile spread across her face. It was all the validation I needed. I didn't win first place. A slick, professional bakery with a marketing budget took the grand prize. But I won something better. The stern-looking woman, whose name was Eleanor Vance and who wrote the most influential food column in the city, came back to my booth after the awards. "That cake," she said, her voice crisp and direct, "is the best thing I've eaten all year. Where's your shop?" I sell at the Fremont Market," I stammered. She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "A baker this talented without a shop is a crime against pastry. Get a business card made. You'll be hearing from me." Her column came out the following Thursday. It was titled "Love in a Bite." She described my cake in language so poetic it made me blush. She told a sanitized version of my story, a young mother, a family legacy, a dream baked into reality. She ended the piece with a single line, "Someone give this woman a storefront before I am forced to finance it myself." The next Sunday at the market was chaos. People lined up before I had even finished setting up my table. They didn't just want the cake, they wanted a piece of the story. I sold out in 45 minutes. I had to hire Maria to handle the cash box while I just served. Arthur Henderson watched from his empty stall, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. The column opened doors I never knew existed. A local coffee shop chain wanted to carry my lemon bars. A high-end grocer wanted an exclusive on the Persian love cake. The orders became too much for Maria's small oven. The cleaning jobs were a distant memory. I was a baker. I was a business owner. A year later, I was signing the lease on a small, dusty storefront in Ballard. It was a terrifying financial leap, secured by a small business loan from a community bank whose manager had become addicted to my fudge. The loan officer had looked at my meticulously kept books, my file of press clippings, and my projected growth. "You're a good bet, Ms. Rossi," he'd said. It was the first time anyone had called me that since the hospital. I had legally taken back my maiden name, a quiet act of severing the final tie. Just as the business was taking flight, a registered letter arrived. The formal, legal envelope felt like a bomb. It was from Ricardo's lawyer. He was officially filing for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. But the chilling part was the attached financial disclosure form, demanding a full accounting of my assets. A cold dread washed over me. He had heard. Somehow, across the world, he had heard about my success, and he was coming for a piece of it. The man who left me with nothing wanted to claim half of the something I had built from scratch. The old Laura would have crumpled. She would have wept with fear and injustice. But I was not the old Laura. I took a deep breath, the scent of cinnamon from a nearby cooling rack steadying my nerves. I used the profits from the coffee shop contract to hire the best divorce attorney I could find. She was a shark in a silk blouse. "He abandoned you and the child. He has no claim to a business you started a year after he left," she assured me, her voice sharp and confident. "This is nuisance. We'll shut it down." And she did. After a few threatening letters from his lawyer were met with a legal firestorm from mine, he backed off. He signed the papers. He was gone, officially and finally. But the attempt left a scar. It reinforced the wall I had built around myself and my daughter. It solidified my resolve. This empire was mine and Sophia's, and I would defend it with the ferocity of a lioness. On a bright June morning, I stood in the empty storefront with a 4-year-old Sophia. The air was thick with the smell of old dust and fresh paint. Sunlight streamed through the large front window, illuminating the motes dancing in the air. "Is this our castle, Mommy?" Sophia asked, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. I knelt down and pulled her into a hug, burying my face in her dark, curly hair that smelled of sunshine and shampoo. "Yes, sweetie," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "This is our castle." I picked up a can of white paint and a brush. On the inside of the glass, in the beautiful, looping cursive I had inherited from my grandmother, I began to paint the words. Sophia's Sweets. It wasn't just a name. It was a promise I had kept. It was the foundation of a life he would never touch. The words on the glass, a testament in looping white script, became a landmark. Sophia's Sweets wasn't just a shop. It was a destination, a haven. In the 4 years that followed the grand opening, the single storefront blossomed. A second location opened in the affluent suburbs, a sleek, modern version of the cozy original. Then came a third, a bustling kiosk in the city's main business district. The sweet scent of cinnamon, melting chocolate, and buttery pastry became synonymous with comfort and quality across the city. My grandmother's recipes were the foundation, but the empire was built on my own sleepless nights, shrewd business decisions, and an unyielding refusal to fail. I was no longer just Laura, the baker. I was Ms. Almeida, CEO. I traded my flour-dusted aprons for tailored blazers, and my kitchen clogs for sensible heels that clicked with authority on the polished floors of my central office. The office was on the second floor of the original shop, a glass-walled perch from which I could watch the joyful chaos of my creation unfold below. Sophia was 8 now, a bright, whip-smart girl with my smile and a quiet confidence that I had fought tooth and nail to give her. She knew the names of all the bakers, could tell a brioche from a challah by scent alone, and did her homework in a small booth by the window, often helping customers by recommending her favorite cookie of the week. She was the heart of the business, its namesake and its soul. The wall I had built around us was no longer one of defense, but a beautiful, thriving garden, and she was the most precious flower within it. The past was a ghost, a story I sometimes told myself late at night to remember how far I had come. The legal battle with Ricardo had been the final cauterization of a festering wound. Since then, there had been nothing. Silence. He had vanished from the world as completely as he had vanished from my life that day in the hospital. I assumed he was with the other woman, living that life free from responsibility he had craved. The thought no longer brought a sting of pain, only a distant, clinical pity. One Tuesday afternoon, my assistant, a crisp and efficient young woman named Clara, placed a stack of resumes on my desk. We were hiring a new delivery driver, a position that required early hours, a clean driving record, and absolute reliability. It was a foundational role. Our drivers were ambassadors of the brand. "I've shortlisted the top 5, Ms. Almeida," Clara said. "The interviews are scheduled for Thursday." I nodded, idly flipping through the pristine pages. Professional drivers, logistics workers, a former courier. And then, the last one. The paper felt different in my hand, thinner, almost fragile. The name leaped off the page, a jolt of electricity up my spine. Ricardo Vargas. My breath hitched. It couldn't be a coincidence. But the work history told a different story. A series of short-lived sales jobs, a failed attempt at day trading, a long, telling gap of unemployment. The address was in a low-rent part of town I knew well from my own lean years. It was him. A cold, calm wave washed over me, extinguishing the initial shock. There was no panic, no fear. Just a profound, chilling clarity. He wasn't coming for the business. He wasn't coming for Sophia. He was coming for a job. A job driving a van with his daughter's name painted on the side. The sheer, pathetic irony of it was staggering. "Clara," I said, my voice perfectly even. "Confirm all the interviews for Thursday. I'll handle them personally." Clara looked surprised. I hadn't conducted a first-round interview for a non-management position in years. "All of them, Ms. Almeida?" "Yes," I said, sliding his resume to the bottom of the pile. "All of them. I didn't do it for him. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it for me." This was not a confrontation I would run from. It was a piece of old business that needed to be filed away for good. I had faced down his lawyers. I could certainly face him. He had written the beginning of our story, but I, and I alone, would write the end. Thursday arrived, a gray, drizzly morning that matched the mood of the occasion. I dressed with meticulous care in a charcoal gray sheath dress and a sharp, black blazer. My hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon. Every detail was a piece of armor. I was not Laura, the woman he had left. I was Ms. Almeida, the woman who would decide his fate. I sat in my office, watching the applicants arrive through the glass wall. They sat in the comfortable chairs we provided, sipping on coffee and water. Then I saw him. He was the last to arrive. The years had carved deep lines into his face. The confident swagger he once possessed was gone, replaced by a defeated slump in his shoulders. His suit was cheap, ill-fitting, and shiny at the elbows. He looked thin, haunted. He clutched a worn briefcase to his chest like a shield, his eyes darting around the cheerful, bustling bakery below, a world away from the sterile waiting area. He didn't look up at my office. He wouldn't dare. I had Clara send him in last. I wanted him to wait. I wanted him to sit there, surrounded by the sights and smells of everything he had thrown away, and contemplate the application in his hands. When he finally walked through the door, the air crackled. He kept his eyes down, fixed on the carpet. "Mr. Vargas?" "Please have a seat," I said, my voice cool and professional. His head snapped up. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went slack with shock, his complexion turning a pasty white. His mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping for air. He saw me, sitting behind a large mahogany desk, my name on a polished brass plate, the thriving empire I commanded visible through the glass behind me. "Laura," he whispered, the name a ghost on his lips. "It's Ms. Almeida," I corrected him gently, my gaze unwavering. I gestured to the chair opposite me. "Please, sit." He stumbled into the chair, his movements clumsy. He placed the briefcase on his lap, his knuckles white as he gripped the handle. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I let it linger, watching him unravel. I didn't know," he stammered, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "Sophia's Sweets. I saw the ad. I needed a job." "I see," I said, picking up his resume, though I had already memorized every pathetic detail. Let's talk about your application. It says here you have experience in sales. Why the interest in a delivery position? The question was a standard one, but in this context, it was a scalpel. I was forcing him to articulate his own dissent. Things didn't work out, he mumbled, his gaze falling to his lap. The woman I left for, she left me. My investments, it was a bad market. It's been difficult. He spoke as if these were random misfortunes, cosmic bad luck that had befallen him. There was no ownership, no accountability. He was still the man who believed life was something that happened to him. I see a significant gap in your employment history here, I continued, my voice betraying no emotion. Can you tell me about that? He looked up, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the old Ricardo, a flash of cornered pride. I was trying to start my own business. And how did that go? He flinched. It failed. Running a business is difficult, I said, the words hanging in the air. It requires sacrifice, commitment, the ability to see things through, especially when it's hard. His eyes filled with tears. The pathetic, self-pitying tears of a man who had finally hit rock bottom. Laura, I'm so sorry, he choked out, the professional pretense shattering completely. I was a fool. An idiot. I think about it every day. I think about you, about the baby. The baby has a name, I said, my voice dropping, losing its corporate chill and gaining a deadly quiet. Her name is Sophia. It's on the sign. It's on the vans you want to drive. It's on every cake box and coffee cup that leaves this building. I know, he sobbed, his face crumbling. I see her name everywhere. It's like the universe is mocking me. Please, Laura. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for a chance. A job. Any job. I'll sweep the floors. I need this. I have nothing. He was begging. The arrogant, cold man who had walked out on his pregnant wife was now begging her for scraps from the table of her success. A part of me, a dark, long-buried part, should have felt a savage sense of victory. But I didn't. I just felt empty. He was a void. A black hole of regret and failure. You say you think about her, I said, leaning forward slightly. Let me tell you what you missed. You missed her first steps. They were taken right in the kitchen where I baked the first 100 cupcakes for the farmer's market. You missed her first word. It was cake. You missed the terror of a 103-degree fever in the middle of the night, with no one to help, no one to even hold my hand. You missed the scraped knees, the school plays, the birthday parties. You missed the fear, the loneliness, the sheer, bone-crushing exhaustion of building a life, a home, and a business from nothing but dust and determination. You weren't here for any of it. You don't get to be here for this. Just then, as if summoned by the story of her own life, the office door opened. It wasn't the boisterous entrance of a small child anymore. Sophia, now 8, entered with a quiet grace. She was holding a drawing. Mommy, she said, her voice clear and bright. I finished the new poster design for the summer specials. Can you look? She stopped when she saw Ricardo. She tilted her head, her dark eyes, his eyes, taking in the weeping, broken man sitting in the chair. There was no recognition, only a child's frank curiosity at the sight of a sad adult. Ricardo stared at her. It was as if he was seeing the sun for the first time. This beautiful, confident child, a living, breathing testament to the life he had discarded. The abstract concept of the baby was now a person, and the reality of it broke him. A raw, guttural sob escaped his lips. Sophia looked from him to me, a flicker of concern on her face. I gave her a small, reassuring smile and stood up, walking around the desk. I knelt down, taking the drawing from her hands. It was a vibrant picture of a son wearing sunglasses, holding a strawberry shortcake. Oh, sweetie, this is wonderful, I said, my voice warm and full of love. This is perfect. Why don't you go show it to Maria? I think she'll want to hang it up right away. Okay, Mommy, she said, wrapping her arms around my neck for a quick hug. She glanced one last time at the strange man before skipping out of the office, her ponytail bouncing behind her. I stood up and turned back to Ricardo. He was staring at the empty doorway, his face a mask of utter devastation. He had finally, truly, understood the magnitude of what he had lost. It wasn't just a wife or a business. It was a whole world. I walked back behind my desk and straightened the pile of resumes, placing his on top. I looked him directly in the eye, my own gaze clear and dry. There was no hatred left. There was nothing left but the need for closure. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Vargas," I said, my voice calm and formal once more. "But the position has been filled." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "My company is a family business, you see," I said, the final words falling like stones into a deep well. "And you're not family." I pressed a button on my intercom. "Clara, could you please show Mr. Vargas out?" I didn't watch him leave. I turned my chair to face the window, looking down at the bakery. I saw Sophia showing her drawing to Maria, our head baker, who laughed and lifted her up in a big hug. I saw customers smiling, families sharing pastries, the warm, golden light of the life I had built. The sweet scent of it all. He was a ghost from a life I had not just survived, but conquered. My resolution was never about revenge. It was about peace. And as I watched my daughter, safe and happy in the castle we had built together, I felt a profound sense of it settle over me. The final brick was in place. The wall was complete. Not to keep the world out, but to keep our world, our love, and our joy safely within. The air in my office no longer held the chill of the past, only the warm, sweet promise of tomorrow.